And we are live, guys. Welcome to episode 65 of YWC Football Talk. As you guys can see, Joe Provost with me, JP3, otherwise known, is with me. I wasn't planning on doing a podcast this week, but Mr. Justin James Watt of Wisconsin decided to become a free agent 12 hours after I did last week's. But Joe, man, welcome to the show. How are we feeling today?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Did you guys get a lot of the same snow that we got?
Yeah, we did. It was a bit of a hectic drive to work this morning, if you will. It's clear now, but a lot of the side streets still aren't plowed, so we're just waiting for that to be done. But the highways and stuff are pretty dry by now, if you will.
Yeah, we've been going through it for like the last week now. It's been pretty crazy, but hey, it's winter in the Midwest.
At least we're not like Texas, where it's just like, oh my God, what's this stuff on the ground? Like, I just love that with Texas, though, where it's just like all of a sudden, like, you have two Dallas Stars games getting canceled because they lost power with everything going on.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, so might as well start off with, obviously, there's a Tom Brady stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, when I lived in Oklahoma for a while, like, we would...
what I was going to say was, I think, so we do... Pardon, folks, if there's a bit of a lag, but it's no big deal. Okay, he is gone from the stream. So, hey guys, it's me. I'm going to try to get him back in at some point, but we're going to talk J.J. Watt. We're going to talk a little bit of, like, off-season moves and whatnot. We'll try to figure everything out. We're just having some technical issues with Joe right now, so just stand by for that. But you got me for now, so if you want to ask any questions, go right ahead. Just ask questions as I'm going to reposition the camera. And, hey, look, my microphone. But here's the biggest thing with this. Like I said last week, I wanted to take a break. I wanted to, like, clear the air, if you will, clear my head. I know I talked about that a lot. But 12 hours after Phil and I were done doing this live stream, Justin James Watt decides, hey, I'm going to become a free agent in about a month from now. So he got a head start on free agency ahead of everyone else. And I was like, man, I got to do a podcast as soon as I found out that news. Why? Because J.J. Watt, an integral part of the Houston Texans fabric, decides, you know what, I'm going to get out before anything else gets worse. You also have everything, too, with him, because he realizes where the team's headed, and he's a beloved son of Houston, and to do him wrong and to do him dirty, I think would be really bad. So I actually want to give kudos and props to the Texans organization as a whole for, like, not getting rid of him, but allowing him to do what he wants. Because everyone says, like, oh, he's got like one good year left. I still think he has a few years left. I don't think he signs for the same money he was making. He was making I think 16 and a half. Randy, I'll ask that in a second. I'm waiting for Joe to get back before we have teams. But I did tweet Browns is one of the teams I was considering. But the thing with Watt, though, is it's a win-win for both, because Watt gets to go chase a championship. And then what's the other magical words? Oh, yes. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to deal with the technical issues and everything like that. Oh, hey, he is. Okay, do we have him back? Oh, he is back. You're back. Your picture looks better than ever. But yeah, no, you look better now. Like before, it was like grainy and stuff and dark. Now it's nice and bright. Yeah, as you can see, guys.
I don't know what was happening, so
it's all good. The only thing I realized too is you and I could have been matching watch buddies tonight on the show, but my Apple Watch is over there, and I'm not a bad host. I'm not going to get up and leave just so that. But I was just talking about the whole Watt situation first, just to start off, because that's the big thing. And part of me thinks, you know what? It's actually the Texans doing good, just because they're letting him go get his championship, and also too, they're saving money on the cap. So I think it's a win-win for both the Houston Texans and J.J. Watt as a whole.
Yeah. The only thing that I think is kind of weird about that situation is you see a lot of people saying, like, okay, well, why can't they just do the same with Deshaun Watson? Obviously, values are way different, but, still kind of, it's not completely apples and oranges, but it is a little bit different. And I think that, they're trying to save face a little bit because, after the Watson situation, how many people are going to be like, oh, yeah, like, I'm dying to go there.
100%. And also, too, he has 1 year left at, I think, 16 and a half or so. So it's not like the cap hit for him is terrible. Or not even terrible, but it's not like it's, the Houston Texans wasting like $20 million, or like what Deshaun case said, he's locked in for like 160. So that's why they got to find a dance partner for him. Meanwhile, with JJ, it's like, you know what, you're in the last year. If you go now, we don't have to pay you anything, and you get to go chase a championship.
Exactly. And, they're obviously going through a rebuild, so it only makes sense. I was kind of surprised that they weren't able to find a trade partner, per se, with him and at least get something back. But, it is what it is. I think they made the right call there, and they'll be remembered for that, come free agency a little bit, as long as, the Deshaun Watson situation doesn't get any uglier than it already kind of is.
Exactly, because that's the biggest thing too here, where this is kind of like the parting of like a bad rainstorm. I'm actually going to go back to what this one before. This is better. With the whole thing with Watson, though, I feel like this is kind of like the parting of like a thunderstorm. Like you have that sunny period for like a little bit, but then it just goes right back to thunder and lightning and all that stuff. It's kind of like that sunny break. But then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you have this. Hey, yeah, you're doing JJ Watt good. But then it's like, what about Watson? Like, why was... I also do agree with you, though, when you said that. I think they did try to find a trading partner, but then it's them probably realizing we're going to have to eat some of his contract, which, you know what, if we release him now, we save $16 million and he gets to go out somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think teams too, I mean, JJ Watt's obviously one of the guys that, he's got a lot of miles on him. And I feel like I've been saying that a lot about some guys lately, but I think some teams probably felt comfortable, like, hey, we don't have to give up assets. We know that, hey, in all reality, they're probably going to end up cutting them. And, the teams that are interested probably felt confident enough that, they can make a strong play for him. And at the end of the day, I'm sure Watt kind of, came out and said, well, I really would like to be cut so I can choose my destination.
Yeah, because he's like, when you look back at it, even though they've only been in the league for 20 years, he's by far the best Texan in the history of that organization. Like, just stats wise, when healthy, he's depoy. Not like he's the winner, but he's always in that conversation. Like, and now there's so many places where he can go and stuff and be a contender. Like, some people think, oh, hey, he may go here, but then you got to look at the cap situation, then you have other things to look at. So it's gonna be very interesting to see where he ends up.
Yeah. Do you have any predictions?
Randy said one of them in the comments to the Browns. I honestly think, and this caught some, Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland.com posted an article about this today saying that there's a very strong possibility that he goes there. Like, imagine a defensive edge pairing of him and Myles Garrett. That's just because Cleveland needs defense. Like, you've got, I believe Olivier Vernon's coming back, or he's a free agent, but then you have Garrett locked up to that long-term deal. You get him in there. I think Cleveland's a good fit. I think Green Bay is also a good fit. I love everyone saying Pittsburgh just to go play with his brothers, but Pittsburgh does not have the cap, and also I don't think they're exactly championship pedigree. Like, it's not 2005, like, where they played the Patriots in that year where they went 15-1, made it to the AFC Championship game, but then lost. I still think there's a little bit of and also too with Pittsburgh, it's a cap situation. One thing I want to touch on is everyone, I saw Phil and I think a few other people saying this, like, oh, he's going to go to Tampa. I'm like, yeah, sure. Everyone loves to say that, but like Tampa has other needs when it comes to who they need to pay.
Yeah, I mean, Tampa's got their work cut out for them, and it wouldn't surprise me if you see some of the veterans who are pretty well off kind of take a pay cut or restructure their salary to try and retain everybody. But yeah, they have a lot of guys that were on kind of like prove it type deals. I mean, Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, those kind of guys. So Godwin's going to be a key guy, I think, to get back. Wide receivers, I think you can replace, but they've just developed so much chemistry. You would hate to see that kind of go to waste.
Yeah, like with Tampa, like just moving on there quickly. One other team I do have in mind for Watt is there was one that came up, which was Buffalo, which I don't want for obvious reasons, but Green Bay was another one that came up to me, which I think, there's a very strong possibility he goes there. Like they said, good Wisconsin boy, went to Wisconsin, Big Ten school. Like, he watched Packers practices through the gates and everything, like for training camp. And yeah, so where do you that's what I wanted to ask you. Where do you see Watt going?
If Pittsburgh can make it work, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's just like you mentioned already. It's, all about the salary cap. Green Bay, bringing in a new defensive coordinator, I think, they're going to try to appease Rodgers after, what all went down. And even though that's a defensive acquisition, it would make that team better. And there's Green Bay has a lot of young talent on that defense that I think could benefit from, a JJ Watt coming in. Even if he's, a shell of what he was, just his leadership, he's a locker room guy. He's going to get the team motivated before games. That'd be a good fit. Not one I want to see as a Lions fan, but yeah, they're not going anywhere anyways anytime soon. So,
like you and me both, it's like how I don't want to see JJ on Buffalo. You don't want to see him on Green Bay. Personally, though, I do think I would not be shocked if it's the Cleveland Browns where he ends up, though. Like, for even to like how we were saying Tampa and even Kansas City, it's like, oh yeah, he's going to go to these teams because he's guaranteed to win. It's like, like, do those teams really want to pay him? But then I see someone like Cleveland who, you know what, up and coming team has championship potential before everyone gets at me, which is so funny to say because 3 years ago they were the laughing stock of the league. Now they were this close to make it to the AFC Championship game this year. So Cleveland's a city honestly to look out for in this whole situation.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people sleep on Cleveland, and I mean, I know that they've got, a lot of the talk around Cleveland was, the egos in the locker room, Odell Beckham, Baker, all that kind of thing. But I don't know, they're talented. I think they're going to be there until somebody knocks them off. I like them better than the Ravens going into next year. The Ravens aren't even sure long term on Lamar Jackson, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think that'd be a savvy hire or a savvy signing if they could acquire J.J. Watt in free agency.
It's one of those moves where really it could like solidify you as a contender if you go out and get him, kind of like what we saw with DeAndre Hopkins in Arizona. And that was another one too. I don't think you saw this, but Dia Hop posted on Instagram today just a little nice little blurb about, hey buddy, you want to come to the desert? Want to play with us? Because even there too, like Arizona is a team who has a really good defensive back set. They've got some good linebackers, but then they need help on the defensive line. So him with like Isaiah Simmons and a healthy Chandler Jones, whew.
Yeah, I feel like Arizona is kind of one of those teams that gets forgotten about quite a bit too. Just it's something about those West Coast teams, but like the Cardinals, I mean, Kyler, another year under his belt, you should expect a big leap from him. Full year with DeAndre Hopkins under his belt as well. That's a young team, and that would also be a great fit. And, they need help on defense. That's really, really where they need it.
Yeah, because they have Vance Joseph, who honestly, he's one of those guys, great defensive coordinator, not so good head coach as we saw with Denver. So there's a multitude of fits because honestly, like this free agent, like most times with free agency, yeah, it's always exciting, but this year there's just so many big names where you don't know where they're going to end up that free agency is just going to be so exciting. And like literally a month tomorrow, St. Patrick's Day, we're finding out where everyone's going to be going. Not everyone, but like a good majority, if you will.
Yeah, I think just on paper, this is shaping up to be one of the crazier NFL off seasons in recent memory, and that's not even including the draft, which is it's got some what people think are going to be generational talents, like a Trevor Lawrence, that kind of thing. So yeah, I love the off season. Typical Lions fan, love the off season more than I love the in season, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, because that's the other thing too, like where the NFL, unlike other sports, like say for example, like the NHL, like they have their offs, like in a normal year. They have their season, the cup final, and then the draft's about a week or so after that, and then free agency, and then they kind of go quiet for about 6 weeks or so. Meanwhile, football, the only quiet times you really get are like that period after the draft, and then like that June, July-ish time, like where you hear some stuff, but you don't hear a whole lot of stuff up until training camp, unless like something big happens, like last year with Mahomes getting his extension or Jamal Adams getting traded right before training camp.
Yeah, and you kind of find out a lot. Like there's usually those kind of surprise cuts during, mini camp. Teams are, like in a salary crunch, and guys that you would never dream of all of a sudden get cut, and they may be willing to restructure, they may not be, and it makes for really interesting moves. And then you start to see the domino effect because another team cuts somebody to go and get that guy that they think is an upgrade. So. Yeah, it's just one of those things. This year there's just been so much movement, and I don't see it stopping. I think it's going to be like a really juicy NFL offseason.
And also to the whole fact of the salary cap number not exactly being known, you're going to see some big names, I feel like, that are going to get cut this offseason where someone's just going to get cut out of the blue, and then you're going to see that's where I think a team like a Tampa Bay or a Kansas City swaps in and gets them. Someone like from a team, who's a little bit cap crunch, if you will. Even though it sounds funny, but you know what? That's the reality. Unless the new broadcast deals get done, because a lot of people don't realize how much money that could generate into the league. That's hundreds of billions of dollars on the line. So those broadcast deals get done, the salary cap number will go up. If not, I think it hovers around that 180 mark.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because even too, if you look at it, like there's so much potential with the broadcast deals this year. Because it's weird. I know ESPN's Monday Night Football is up at the end of this year. But then everyone else is 2022. So we'll see what happens. But we all know that ESPN is really going to be pushing. I even think they want to get back on the Super Bowl picture because for a while it was ABC before NBC Sunday Night Football took over.
Yeah, that's what, and I remember that. And another thing to watch. Do you know if they renewed like the Amazon Prime for? 'Cause I know that was in limbo.
I believe so. I know Thursday Night Football going into this year is going to be. Actually, I have a whole thing I can look up. I'm just going to say it right now and get your thoughts because it was on here. Let's see. This will be the 8th year under the current broadcast contracts with CBS, ESPN, Fox, and NBC. This includes cross-flexing, which switches games between Fox and CBS, because as we know, AFC, CBS, NFC, Fox. And then regardless of this, NBC will still air Sunday Night Football and the kickoff game and Thursday Night Thanksgiving, which didn't happen this year, obviously, because of COVID. And then Monday Night Football will air on ESPN with select games on ABC. Then the Pro Bowl, which no one really cares about. The only thing it says here is that Thursday Night Football is NFL Network, but will simulcast onto Fox. And the best thing about this is that NBC will have the Super Bowl this year. They were supposed to host this year's Super Bowl, but because this coming year is an Olympic year, I think they really want to like tie the two together, if you will. And then ESPN, like I said, ESPN's Monday Night Football contract expires at the end of this year, and the CBS, Fox, and NBC contracts expire at the end of 2022. But the NFL may begin negotiations on all new broadcast deals at the same time. So that's where I say a lot of money's on the line with the broadcast contracts because, look, you have everything. As for Amazon Prime, I don't know. And then also, too, another one to watch out for is the Nickelodeon, which brought in 2 million views for that Saints-Bears game, which I wouldn't be shocked if you see a couple games airing on Nickelodeon this coming season.
Yeah, they definitely promoted that pretty hard. And then even like, I don't know, you play Madden at all?
Mm-hmm.
They've been plugging in like the Nickelodeon version as like a demo to play on like Madden. So yeah, they're definitely like brewing something up there, and I think that they're trying to capture that younger audience. And I can, it seems like a little bit gimmicky, but I understand the motive behind it for sure.
Exactly, because look, if you can get that audience of those, like a perfect example, I was going to say if you can get the younger audience, but an example, I don't know if you saw this, but Kurt Warner has a son. I think he's in his like early 30s, but he's not fully functioning. I don't know if it's autism or if he just had like a lot of brain damage as a kid, but I'm not saying anything bad. Or he's blind. I know that, but he also has some developmental disabilities. Not a knock against him, but he posted this thing saying how his son never watched football, but then he watched the Nickelodeon game because he loves Nickelodeon. So even stuff like that. I'm not saying like obviously I'm not trying to sound negative. If I sound like that, I apologize. But if you can capture audiences of people who would never watch a football game in their life, but then you see a kid or someone in that case, hey, look, there's Nickelodeon, like there's SpongeBob, there's this. It's stuff they can relate to. It's just a whole other avenue where the NFL can go down to get this whole other audience. But I just want to bring the Kurt Warner thing up because honestly, it's one of those like sentimental stories that you don't think about when the Nickelodeon thing first airs, but when you actually see proof of it, it was a pretty cool scene to see, and it kind of tugs at your heartstrings a little bit too.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's kind of marketing 101, right? You go for the heartstrings, and the people will follow, and that's. I mean, the NFL knows what it's doing. I will say I disagree with the thought of going to like a 17 game season. I don't think that it needs to be extended at all, but that's kind of a different topic. But yeah, I mean, the NFL is the NFL. I mean, they know what they're doing.
You know what? If they just eliminate the preseason to 3 games and then they say, hey, we're going to replace this, the only thing is, though, you're going to be extending the season further because obviously if you started a week earlier, you're starting Labor Day weekend, which you're like, I remember the NFL, I believe, used to do that back in the day, but if you start Labor Day weekend, you're asking to lose ratings because you're like, I'd rather be at a lake on Labor Day weekend or just chilling. Like, I'm not thinking about football, although fantasy drafts do happen at that time. So we'll see what happens. I'll only be in favor of a 17th game if they do this where you have more interconference actions. You're not waiting every 4 years. Like, say for example, Detroit can play like, let's say Las Vegas this year, for example. Like if you get stuff like that, if it's just like another game against like a team in your conference, no. But if you do more interconference flexing, I'm all for it.
Yeah, definitely. And to that Labor Day weekend point, I mean, that's it depends on how the schedule or how the year kind of falls, but that's typically, or it has been about 50-50, the start of college football. And I know that they usually take advantage of having like 2 or 3 Sunday games, and then they even run a Monday night game. That's usually pretty like, they try to plug in at least like 1 ranked team, if not 2.
Yeah, I believe this year it's going to be the U playing Alabama and Atlanta. Big Rat, who was on this podcast before, He said that's one of the big games opening weekend is, like I said, Miami University against Alabama. Miami should probably get their floor wiped, but you know what? They have to bring the big teams in for ratings. So if the NFL interferes with that, that's why, too, the NFL doesn't do their Saturday games until late in the year when it's pretty much them going up against, like, the whatever bowl games.
Yeah, definitely. And, they kind of piggyback off each other a little bit. Obviously, college football yields to the NFL no matter what, but it seems to be kind of, it's mutually beneficial, right? Because, I mean, it makes no sense for them to compete. They want eyes on college football because that creates a more educated fan base on who's coming in. Not that that's, the major concern here, but it's definitely, they definitely won't compete against each other. I know that.
Oh, 100%. That's the one big thing to look at all this, too, is with especially to that college football market, because guess what? It opens up so many people's eyes to, hey, who's coming in the draft, like what players to watch out for, especially if you're on those teams. No offense here, but if you're in that Detroit Lions situation where you know what, your team's not going to be good, you're probably going to be picking in the top 5 for 2022. So you get to already have a look at what prospects potentially your team's going to be getting for the next year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that they just dropped not the formal schedule, but they dropped the opponents within like the last week or so, or has that been out for a minute?
For who's playing for the NFL or for college?
NFL.
Yeah, like I can already tell you who's playing who for New England. I don't know Detroit's schedule, but I'll take a look at it right now. You kind of piqued my curiosity there, which was always a good thing. Let's see here. Got to find it. Oh, here we go. Detroit Lions. Their 2021 opponents, obviously, they're visiting the NFC North 5 times, excuse me. Or 1, 2, 4, 6. Never mind, 6 games. You guys play host to Arizona and San Fran. You go to Seattle and LA. You play Philly at home. You go to Atlanta. Baltimore and Cincinnati come to you, and you guys go to Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I know. They're probably their only chance at a primetime game would be at LA. Just that one jumps out for very obvious reasons. On top of that, the West Coast, it's easier for them to fly, to swing that. They like a lot of those West Coast teams in the later slot. So I could see that being a primetime game. If not, it'll absolutely be like a 4-o'clocker for sure. Eastern.
I think that one Detroit LA game could potentially be Monday Night Football. Like I kind of hate it when, just give me a sec. I hate it when they kind of sewer teams where they get Thursday night. We saw it a few years ago where the Vikings played a Thursday nighter against the Rams out in LA. So when you get situations like that, like you don't really want to screw over anyone, because also like that could be a Sunday nighter, but I feel like it would be a Sunday nighter if it was the opposite way around, like where if it was LA coming into Detroit, just the whole Stafford homecoming. But since it's Stafford against the Lions in LA, that's where I feel like it'll probably be Monday Night Football as opposed to Thursday or a Sunday nighter.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird, but it almost feels like too good to be a Thursday. And I get it. Like, I wish we had some better like Thursday night games, but I get it at the same time because they know it could be the Lions versus God, who else was awful this year? The Dolphins,
Cincinnati,
or Jacksonville. Like who? Right, exactly. Yeah. They know they can plug any teams in there. People are going to tune in. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I remember the Jets-Broncos game back in October. I was like, oh, man, why am I going to watch this? And I tune in, and it ends up being a good game. Meanwhile, Chiefs-Ravens was that Monday night, and everyone thought this is going to be a great game. But then Kansas City – I'm just going to step out of frame for a second. But then the Baltimore-Kansas City ended up being kind of a dud. So it's always those games that like you don't expect to be good kind of like exceed your expectations, which is never a bad thing in the NFL. But also this year too, because also this has to do with a few things. One is fantasy football. 2 is because of this podcast is the reason why I was watching more and more football. And even 2, now we know with us being wrestling fans, I will choose a crappy Monday Night Football game over wrestling when that time of the year comes.
Yeah, sadly it's not even close anymore. Like not even close.
No, not at all. Like when I just look at it, I'm just like Monday Night Raw or Bears Rams, for example. Let's just throw that one out there. I'm like Bears Rams. But
yeah, I don't care. I don't care if I don't have any. Yeah, I don't care if I have any Bear or Ram on my fantasy team. There's a 99% chance, sadly, which I mean, it used to be the complete opposite. But yeah, it's it's not even close.
I was the same too, because a lot of the times what I would do is I would only pick Monday Night Football over wrestling when it was like the Patriots playing, or even too on a Sunday night when it was like a pay-per-view. I'd watch it just the next day. Obviously now with the network, you're able to do that, but football will always win now over wrestling, just because that time of year, especially too, is when wrestling's not really at its peak, if you will. Like now they're starting to get into it. Obviously, the WrestleMania season brewing, but when there's nothing involved with wrestling, it's just, I'm like, why bother? I could spend 3 hours bored watching wrestling, or I could watch a football game and be somewhat entertained.
Yeah, 100%.
See, we both agree here, guys. That's what we do. But the biggest thing with this whole like broadcast scheduling too is they always try to find out who's like who to schedule, because obviously they want to be nice and give everyone a primetime game. But then there's some teams where I look at it, I'm like, you don't deserve primetime. That's why we always get like certain games. Like I remember Miami Jacksonville this year going into the year, you're like, why is this on primetime? Like, and the fact too, it's Joe Buck and Troy Aikman calling it, which I'm just like, guys, come on. But one other thing with that schedule of teams, if they were playing in Detroit, I think it would be a great Thanksgiving matchup, and that is Detroit versus Pittsburgh. But I just remembered, I believe it's going to be Fox doing the Thanksgiving game in Detroit, so we'll see what happens. You could do the Eagles, though, as like an old-school rival, or go the traditional crappy route and just do Lions and Bears, because I feel like that's been Thanksgiving like every other year or every year when it's not an AFC team going into Detroit.
Yeah, and well, even going back to like when I was younger, there was at least like a few like Lions Packers games that fell on Thanksgiving too. So yeah, I mean that one's always kind of weird. The Texans have been like 2 out of the last 5 randomly, so they're not afraid to plug in an AFC team and then switch it over to CBS. But you can always count on like of course like Washington football or Dallas, just the staples.
The one I was already looking ahead to the schedules for this year too, and the one that I could see Dallas doing is they're playing Vegas at home this year, so I could see that being the Thanksgiving matchup. Even though both teams may be mediocre, that's just for the classic nostalgia feel for Thanksgiving, if you will.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and there are 2 teams that I think mediocre is probably a decent word, but I think both teams at the same time have it wouldn't surprise me if they're 11-5, 10-6 caliber at the same time.
You know what, for Vegas, like that's one thing I want to transition into, because you see a lot of trade rumors with this team, and I want to talk. Let's talk Vegas for a bit, because Dallas, I think a lot depends on how they improve their defense. Because I said this before, where that team's got a good offense, but their defense is terrible. But Las Vegas, I saw a fact actually tweeted out by Gil Brandt, if you believe it or not. He said that for the Raiders, and if you're a Raiders fan, you plug your ears. 2004, 2005, 2007. They drafted I forget who was 04, I forget who was 05, but 07 was Jamarcus Russell. The next those 3 years, the next pick is someone who's either going into Canton or will go into Canton when they retire. 04, the pick after was Larry Fitzgerald. 05, the pick after was Aaron Rodgers. 2007, the pick after them was Calvin Johnson. So that's a little bit of a painful pill to swallow if you're a Raider fan. It's like the 3 guys, like I know Jamarcus Russell's the only one I remember, but the fact that all 3 of those guys, who are all first ballot Hall of Famers, went after you, that's got to hurt.
Yeah, and the Lions actually didn't botch that pick. It just fell into their lap. Only because that happened. Don't get it twisted. If they would have taken Calvin, the Lions would have been all about Jamarcus Russell.
Well, you know what? That's a bridge you never had to cross. So don't even but even too, Jamarcus Russell is like this highly touted prospect and everything, and then he just got to the league and he got complacent, he got lazy. So like there was potential there, but that's what happens a lot of the times with the NFL. Like the guys get there and it's like, oh yeah, look, everything's guaranteed, but in reality, nothing's guaranteed when you're an NFL player.
Yeah, I think, kind of like a similar comp is almost like a Dwayne Haskins a little bit,
yeah.
Or even like he didn't go as high, but Cardale Jones, when he had his run with Ohio State, and, teams kind of like all of a sudden he went from like undrafted, unknown to like, okay, like we're putting him on our board and he's like a top, going in the top 3 rounds. So I think, there's kind of a stigma there for a while where teams kind of like, we're like, okay, we need to see more than just some guy go on a run where he's hot for 4 or 5 games.
Exactly. That's what the whole big thing with Justin Fields is this year. Because before we go back to the Raider talk, I just want to say this with Fields, because for all the good he did and got his team to the national championship, like you got to remember, he had the bad game against Indiana and the bad game against Northwestern, which besides Clemson and Alabama, those were the 2 best opponents that they played. Obviously, you steamroll the easy competition, But it's when the competition level gets beefed up to the capabilities of, hey, you know what, they're going to give you trouble. You got to put up or shut up. And they kind of cowered against Indiana. Like, they had the big lead, but they almost blew it. And then Northwestern, it took them all to wake up. So that's just something for NFL scouts to be a little wary about.
Yeah, definitely. And then before we get back to the Raider talk again, you know, I know teams are making a big deal of his name escapes me at the moment, but the fact that he wasn't a team captain, kind of making like it's almost like draft day come to life. Like, I don't know, like there's a lot to that kind of stuff, I think, but at the same time, I think sometimes it's definitely like overblown. Was
The
it
only
Trey
dollar question,
Lance
though,
or
the million
Zach
dollar question
Wilson?
with Justin.
Zach Wilson, I think.
Yeah. Because the big question with Zach Wilson was, did anybody go to his 21st birthday party, which was just a joke from the movie Draft Day with Bo Callahan, which I saw it on Twitter the other day, and I got to watch that movie before the draft, man. That's such an awesome movie. But I just saw people saying that was Zach Wilson, where it's the same thing with Fields, too, where it's like, hey, he's a good player on the field, but how is he off the field? Because not a lot of people realize how much importance there is to off-field chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of not to like toot the horn that everybody's probably so tired of, but I think that just is another reason why, like, you know, Tom Brady is so great. Like, you know, comes to a new place, limited practice time before the season. You know, you could tell kind of early on that they weren't quite gelled, but that came with time and leadership, and like that's just what a quarterback has to be in this league. You have to be able to develop chemistry. And you've got to make everybody around you better. And you know, he's obviously set the bar super high, but if you know, it's just you. If you can strive to be that, you can still come up short and still do really, really well. You know, anybody that's played with Matt Stafford will tell you the same thing. You know, he makes people around him better. He's a great locker room guy, great leader. You know, just didn't work out in Detroit for very obvious reasons.
Exactly. Now he's got a chance to succeed. But I just wanted to bring up Vegas quickly because that's a team where you're starting to hear a lot of rumors about quarterback. Like, oh, is now a good time to go trade Derek Carr when Derek Carr's coming off a career year. So, like, for as much, I'm not a guy on here I'm not a big Derek Carr guy. Like, I like him. I respect his game, but I don't think he's like this. Like, he's not obviously like the greatest quarterback in the league. That right now, that's Patrick. But with Vegas, I feel like they're in such that weird, like, you know, when you're in a relationship with a girl, but like you're ready to say I love you, but like the other, like, or if you say it and like it has like negative feedback, she kind of like goes like yeah, you're a good guy too. Like, you're not friend zoned, but like it's that awkward encounter. That's how I feel like the relationship between like John Gruden and Derek Carr is. Like, Derek Carr is like fully committed, meanwhile John Gruden has commitment issues.
Yeah. I mean, everything that you heard, all the rumors was that he can't stand him. He wants to move on from him. And I think Gruden's kind of one of those guys, like, he kind of wants his guy. It's kind of like when a new GM comes in, they want their coach. And if they're going to sink or swim, it's going to be on, you know, it's going to be because of their decisions, not, you know, riding with somebody that was placed before them. I thought Carr had an admirable year, especially, you know, if you consider if it's true that, you know, his coach has it out for him and maybe that was a chip on his shoulder. But that'll be interesting to see. I mean, he's going to get an opportunity this year and, you know, we'll see what happens.
100%. We'll see what happens. I think this is the year really where it's the make or break it year for Derek Carr, as in if he'll be a Las Vegas Raider going forward, because obviously this year more than likely they will have fans in the stands. But the big question too with the Raiders, and I got to say it's still their defense because they do have some young pieces, but they did obviously fire Paul Gunther, which I get, but you do not fire a coordinator when you have a short week. Like, I remember they fired him after the Colts game, but then they had a game on Thursday against the Los Angeles Chargers that last Thursday nighter of the year, which I'm like, you do it. You should have waited and done it after that Charger game because you have like a 9-day break in between games. So you have time to do that. Meanwhile, they threw Rod Marinelli into the fire and just expected him, hey, you have 3 days to learn this defense and get these guys under your wing. Meanwhile, now they bring in Gus Bradley from the Chargers. So we'll see how it goes. But if they don't make any significant moves, I wouldn't be shocked if they're in that 8-8 to like 9-7 purgatory again. And I only say purgatory because look at what the Chicago Bears have been the last couple of years. You don't want to be in that 8-8 constant because you're not bad enough to tank, but you're also not good enough to be a playoff team.
Yeah, definitely. The Bears, you know, they've got pieces there. they just, they really need a quarterback. And I'm surprised that they, if there was a team that was going to, dish out, obviously interdivision trades rarely ever like pay off. Or pan out or come to fruition.
Yeah.
So I didn't expect like Stafford to, land there by any means, but I thought that they would be bigger players in the Deshaun Watson market, and you really haven't heard too much about that.
That's kind of like getting the set. Like, I don't like using this term, but some people do, the whole sloppy seconds thing. That's what I feel like them getting Deshaun Watson's like, because the fan base is going to be happy they got him, but at the same time too, they're going to be like, we gave up all this to get him. We could have had him for nothing 4 years ago. Now we got Deshaun Watson. Like, I'm not saying it in the sense of like, oh, it's bad for them. Obviously, it'd be great for the Bears organization, because if you look at their team the last few years, you know that dragon meme, like where it's like the 3-headed dragon.
Yep.
That's the Chicago Bears, where you have like the scary dragon, which is like the defense, the one that lets like whatever, which is your special teams, and then you have the dragon who looks like a complete idiot. That's your offense. So that's like, I was literally listening to Pro Football Talk with Mike Florio today, and that's exactly when they were describing the Bears. I'm like, yeah, that's the 3-headed dragon that everyone uses to make fun of people. I'm like, that's the Chicago Bears.
100%. And I was just looking like where they're drafting this year, and it's not so far fetched anymore to think that a rookie quarterback can't come in to a situation. I know they've had some struggles along the offensive line a little bit, but it's not far fetched like it used to be. Like, these quarterbacks are coming in so much more prepared than ever. So I really do think that, these guys can plug and play like right away. It just, it's about the situation that they're coming into more so than almost anything. And I think, with regards to the Bears, maybe they explore free agency a little bit, but yeah, I would just hate to see, they went all in, for Khalil Mack. I would just, I'd hate to see, I just know if I was a Bears fan, I'd hate to see all that just go to waste.
Exactly, because it's like, look, you got Khalil Mack, he's a great defensive player, and then you traded all that away. Now you're trading away more draft capital for a quarterback now, which I'm looking at Deshaun Watson. I'm saying, like, does he have the weapons around him to be not a solidified contender in the NFC North, but in the NFC as a whole? That's the $1 million question with the Bears. But also, that would be a team where I honestly would not be shocked if they were the team to reach for Mac Jones.
Yeah, I could see that. I think about, and I could be definitely wrong on this. Those Alabama quarterbacks, by and large, don't seem to pan out. And, it's unfair because we don't know.
Yeah.
But when you're throwing consistently to 3 or 4 first-round picks, you have an offensive line that's all, top 2 or 3 rounds. You've got studs for running backs. Yep, exactly. So, yeah, it's unfair, but at the same time, that's just kind of the stigma that comes with it. And until then, I mean, and I know too, there's a little bit of like character concerns. He got in trouble kind of earlier in his college career and that kind of thing. So I know I wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of a guy that slips. Although teams always seem to kind of, it's funny. Quarterbacks are either reach for or they fall. There's kind of no in between.
Exactly. Like, Mac's a guy where I wouldn't be shocked if someone were to reach for him on, like, in that later first round on Thursday. But more than realistically, I think he will go on the Friday, day 2, like the second, third rounder, because he is a development project. Because a lot of the comparisons I've heard with him is like what Kirk Cousins was as a rookie. That's what kind of like I think his ceiling is.
Yeah, exactly. I think that if they can just find a guy to plug in there, I don't foresee that being like a terrible. I mean, they would be contenders for the North instantly, in my opinion. There's no doubt in my mind about it. I mean, you look at Green Bay, they're the front runners, but I think that Chicago, with a quarterback, could give them a run for their money, and I guarantee you they would look to add another weapon on offense. They'll get Cohen back. I don't believe he's a free agent, so.
Nobody was involved with those trade talks potentially with Carson Wentz, which if you're looking at that, like, Bears fans will want Ryan Pace out of town if they gave up a first-round pick for Carson Wentz. Like, Howie Roseman will look like a king in Philly, but I would not hold it above Ryan Pace to do something idiotic like that.
Yeah. it's just so funny, right, with Wentz, because I mean, he looked, there's times in his career where he's looked elite,
Yeah.
and you wonder if a change of scenery, is what the doctor ordered. At the same time, could I risk giving up a first rounder? I don't think so.
No, like if Wentz gets traded, like take at worst case, just give up a second for him. Like, but in reality, it should be like, reality, it should be like a 3rd to 5th round pick you're giving up for him. It should not be a day 1 first rounder. If you're doing that, like, look, I know going into this year, like I was already planting the seeds on who's on the hot seat already. Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are at the top of that list for coaches that probably could get fired at the end of 21. But the one thing I did learn, though, from a Bears fan, which I have to get someone who's Bears knowledgeable on here just to see what they have to say. But I learned from a Bears fan, actually, Tommy, friend of Pico's, that the McCaskies and the Hallis family, they don't fire coaches or GMs during the regular season. It's either after the season or before the season. So, which I know is the same thing, but right now, we're at that after the season point. I don't think you can say before the season starts until probably around summertime.
Yeah, I can respect that because a lot of ownerships, definitely don't fall under, that category. But at the end of the day, they're kind of a team that, and I keep coming back to like the Rams trade with Stafford, but I just feel like, if there was a team that should show urgency similar to that, it's gotta be them. And there's rumors of like the Dolphins potentially seeing what the market is for Tua. I don't think Tua is definitely, to me, like a system quarterback. He's kind of a game manager. I don't think he's like an insane upgrade by any means. He's an upgrade over Trubisky, I would say, on paper right now, but not like enough that's gonna like go from, okay, we're 7-9, 8-8, 9-7 to a legitimate NFC contender.
Exactly, because that's Chicago's just so weird, but you got to respect it too, though, with the whole McCaskey family. I only say McCaskey because it's obviously the daughter, George Hallis, who's in charge. But with the Miami Dolphins, like everyone's saying, like, oh, hey, go trade him. Like he had a bad year. You got to remember, he's coming off that hip injury. Look at Tom Brady after his ACL. He's the Patriot fan, goes to Tom Brady. Well, no shit, Sherlock. I'm always going to do it, no matter the episode. 2008 tears his ACL. 2009, his year was okay. They lost in the wild card round to the Ravens. In 2010, he was the unanimous MVP of the league. I'm not saying Tua's going to come out and have this baller MVP season. Hey, he could, for all we know. Like a lot of people are saying, we expect Justin Herbert to take a second-year leap. But like, I'm just trying to figure out if Herbert can still play to the level of what he was as a rookie, the Chargers could make the playoffs. But if Tua elevates his game to where Flores can consistently rely on him, I don't see the problem. The only thing I would do if I'm the Miami Dolphins, get another pass catcher, which you know what? Go get Devontae Smith. Played college ball too, so it makes perfect sense. And then the other thing you can do is just beef up your offensive line and maybe add in a running back. Like Myles Gaskin's good, but if you can get someone in there, like go get like a Travis Etienne or a Najee Harris, they're going to be a force in the AFC East and the AFC as a whole. I'm not saying Super Bowl contender, but they're going to be that team that teams don't want to go play, especially in that heat down in South Beach.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny you mentioned Najee Harris, former Bama teammate, so you already know that they got a little bit of chemistry. They're comfortable playing together. And Najee is one of the, I struggle to recall a more all-around back. Some of the catches he made were like, he's got wide receiver hands, and that is so dangerous in the NFL. I mean, I think you're starting to see more. The NFL, by and large, more and more starting to mimic the college game a little bit. Like, you're seeing more of the RPOs, you're seeing more of the spread, you're seeing more of the motion, the motion of guys. So guys like Najee Harris I'm high on him. He's the real deal. And that'd be another good fit down there for sure.
He's just that ground and pound running back, but guess what? He can catch out of the backfield too. So you can always interchange him and Gaskin, like whether it's there. Miami's just got the big question of a lot of people say like, oh, they're overrated or whatever. I'm like, look, if you give Tua a full season, and also too, here's the big key, a proper off season. Obviously, I still think it's going to be restrictive, but with the way, obviously, the COVID vaccine situation is way better in the United States than it is up here in Canada. at certain points, like, look, I'm pretty sure the NFL is going to try to get as many players vaccinated this offseason as possible so that they can have a proper offseason. Like, because last year he didn't get a rookie mini camp. Even, too, going back to the Bucs, I believe it was Cameron Brady who said their first full team practice together was August 14th, which most times that's May 14th. So that's an additional 90 days you didn't get to play with your teammates. Now, obviously, you do off-field workouts and stuff, but if you give a lot of these players who didn't get it proper offseason, if you give them a proper offseason, there's going to be a lot of teams who are going to be ready to go come September 12th. The only other thing I want to say before I throw back to Joe is Cleveland went through the same thing too. Like, that's why they got smoked week 1 against Baltimore, because they were like, yeah, we only had a few weeks to get to know everyone because they're going through a new head coach. So we'll see what happens, but hopefully the NFL can get a proper offseason in. And yeah, I'm just going to go back to you. I have something else I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it later.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge, and that's why I wasn't too quick to judge a lot of the rookies. Of course, everybody looked at Herbert, and his early success, but coming out, if not for that freak injury to Tyrod Taylor, who knows if we even see Herbert this year. I mean, I get, we definitely would have at some point, given where that team was going. I'm guessing they would have thrown him in just to kind of see what he does or would do, but yeah, that's a great point. And a lot of these rookies that just completed their first season, they're still they haven't gotten that full mini camp. And I did read there was a rumor that they were going to allow last year's rookies to partake in a rookie mini camp as long as everything goes according to plan. So that'll be something to watch out for still.
Yeah, like, obviously they canceled stuff like the combine, but that's understandable. You can do pro days at the local universities where you only send select personnel and stuff. Because if you did the combine, you're honestly, this is going to sound bad, but I feel like you're almost asking for COVID to be a problem, just because when you have that many people gathering in like that much space, because you have not only, because I think I've talked to you about this before, but I've talked to other people about this, that the combine usually is a big stage for free agency as well. Something that goes unnoticed by the casual fan. A lot of people think it's just there to show for talent or whatnot, but that's where a lot of free agency talks get going. That's why agents go there, and they'll be like, hey, so what teams are interested in my guy? But that I didn't know about that note, but that's a very good point to add on.
It's definitely like comparable. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, the only thing I was going to say is, look, you can do the off days, but the fact that that second-year players will be able to attend rookie camp, I think will be huge for a lot of players' development, especially for those rookies who, maybe took a little bit of a while to get going, kind of like guys like a Michael Pittman Jr., or even to like the undrafted guys who never really got a chance to showcase their talents like they would have in a normal NFL offseason.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not like, I haven't done the full combine weekend, but it's basically like a big party, and it's kind of, I compare it to, I mean, and I'm only like 4 hours from Indy. It's always something I've wanted to do. I know a lot of people that like to like chase autographs and that kind of thing because all the GMs are there, all the coaches are there. A lot of Hall of Famers come down and like kind of give their 2 cents. And so Indy's kind of, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but Indy is like one of the most underrated cities in the United States. Everything is super walkable. I think it would be, if it wasn't for the cold Midwest weather, I think it would be like a really like, I think it'd do well for like Mania season. Totally different topic, I know. But yeah, I compare the combine almost to like the winter meetings of baseball. And like you said, that's where a lot of the GMs, a lot of the coaches kind of mesh. They all meet at like the big baller steakhouses that are right downtown, next to the old, it's not called that anymore, but the Conseco Fieldhouse, the RC Dome, all that stuff. Bunch of hotels, bunch of cool steakhouses. Like it's cool. But yeah, they're I definitely want to get to that one time, and yeah, maybe if you're available in the future, we can hit that up together.
Obviously, because to be honest, out of all NFL events, like a lot of people will say, I'd love to get credentialed to the Super Bowl. I honestly would love to get a credential for the Combine as a media thing, to interview these prospects and stuff like that, because that's the other thing too. Like, teams have full suites at the Combine. Like, that's where a lot of the interviews take place. And now you have like the whole Zoom stuff. Like, now you could have an interaction like you and me, where it's like, hey, you want to see me bench like 30 reps of like 225 pounds? But now that's why you get the pro days and stuff. And even too, I just want to go back to the Clemson. I want to, because Clemson had theirs already, obviously, because of Trevor Lawrence and his surgery, which was completed today, successful. I think today or yesterday, but it was a successful operation.
Yep.
the big thing with his pro day where everyone's saying, like, all these teams are going there, and, like, I saw the Patriots name in there, and everyone's like, oh, why are they going there? They have no chance to do with him. It's like there's other players to look at. Obviously, he's the main attraction, but you have guys like Amari Rodgers, Travis Etienne, other Clemson players. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head who's declared and who's staying, but it's not just about Lawrence. Obviously, he's the main attraction, the big ticket, but that's the other thing with pro days, too. A lot of people got to remember it's not just about the big name guys. Like, there's other guys, too, who day 2 and day 3 guys mean a lot to teams. Like, that's why I'm going to go on a tangent here, because Bill Belichick obviously gets a lot of flack for his day 1 drafting not being the best when it comes to, like, offensively. You look at the man's drafting abilities day 2 and day 3. That's why he's been able to build a winner, because he goes and gets those late round picks who are able to prove themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I heard from somebody who's pretty well connected within like NFL media. Apparently, like, if you could go into a war room, they don't argue so much about the day 1 picks. It's the day 2 and especially the day 3 where there's the most disagreement and the most heated battles, because scouts are so adamant, like, we need to go get this guy. He's still available. Like, I know he'll help us. And it's just crazy. And like you said, the Senior Bowl, the pro days, that's all that, I mean, that means so much more for the kind of the under the radar guys.
Exactly. I'm moving off shoulder because I've started reading this book that I got for Christmas. I don't have like the flap for it because I'm not in my house right now. But this book right here is called The Dynasty. I think you can guess what it's about. It's just the hardcover, but I'm gonna see if there's. Let's see here. Is there any? No, there's no pictures related to the team. But this book has to do everything with Robert Kraft buying the New England Patriots. I'm not much of a reader, but I am already done 109 pages, and I started this book last week. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's like a 500-plus page book. And it shows, like, there's an article back in the 90s about, like, obviously the day 1 guys. There's some arguments that there's a disagreement where it's like, hey, we should go player A or player B. But you're right. Day 2 and day 3 is where, like, shit gets real. It's like where where it's like, hey, this guy's still on the board, or hey, this is like the guys like you're sleeping on. It's like with fantasy football, how everyone thinks, hey, I got a great round 1 draft pick. Guess what? The guy who you got in like the 9th or 10th round of a fantasy football draft can help you win a championship. It's the exact same thing for the NFL. Only we stress a lot about fantasy football, but our life's not impacted if we win some money or not. Meanwhile, you screw up on a day 2 or day 3 pick, it could potentially be your job on the line.
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely something that I've realized, like, over the years. Like, you look back at the end of the season, or at least I do, look back at the end of the season or even mid-season, and I look back and I say, dang, like, I got him that late. I don't even remember that. Or, oh, that guy fell that far and I didn't hit on him. It's just, it's one of those things. It's truly where you separate yourself from the pack is those later rounds. And then, of course, free agent acquisitions, etc.
Exactly. That's like why I say Bill Belichick's so good at drafting, because everyone's like, oh, day 1 or whatever. It's day 2 and day 3 is where he always finds those hidden gems. Like this year, Kyle Duggar is like one of those guys where it's like, who or why'd you draft him? Like, even too, someone told me like, oh, like you only drafted him because Xavier McKinney went right before, where I'm like, you know what? That could be true, but look at the difference. Xavier McKinney was hurt for a lot of the year, which obviously you can't control that. But Kyle Duggar came in and played a very active role with the Patriots. Even too, you're going to know this. Michael Onwenu, 6th round pick, offensive lineman, first team all rookie. Something about 6 rounders in New England Patriots from Michigan.
I mean, a lot of with being as unbiased as possible, and what did he rated, like second best rookie offensive lineman, only behind Wirfs, who didn't allow a sack as a left tackle. I mean, by far and away the best interior lineman in the draft as a rookie. So, I was kind of baffled that he fell that far. Of course, I got to see him, this year. It wasn't, or the prior year, when we had a full season, I got to see him every week. And, it's just the coaches praise. I watch all the Michigan pressers Monday, Wednesday, Friday leading up to the new week. And he was just praised so much. And it's just great to see it translate in the league.
Yeah. One question I wanted to ask you about the draft, actually, since we're on the Michigan note. Obviously, there's some guys like Kwity Pope or Kwity Payne, I think is the guy's name. But he's probably going to go to round 1 or round 2. Kwity Paye.
Mhm.
Who's a Michigan player that could go later on that's kind of underrated at the moment that you think could be a very good player in the NFL?
They don't. So it's kind of a weird year for them as far as like the draft goes, because Kwity Paye's kind of highly touted. Nico Collins, who sat out this year, he was a borderline 5-star wide receiver coming in. He's not a burner by any means, but he's like 6'4", 6'5". He can go get contested catches. He led the last 2 years in that he played drawing pass interference and holdings. So he's definitely like somebody that's I'm super intrigued to see where he goes and how he fits in. And you see wide receivers a lot. They used to say, oh, you got to give wide receivers 2 or 3 years, but that's another position just with all the camps, all the drills, all the 7-on-7s. You see wide receivers, they're able to come in and play right away too and make an impact. We saw that this year, and this was a loaded rookie wide receiver class. Um, I'm trying to think of some guys that, it's tough because they don't have a whole lot of guys. They were super young, so they don't have a whole lot of guys coming out. I Ambry Thomas, he was a corner for Michigan. He's another one who sat out. He's probably going to be he'll definitely be day 2 or day 3, maybe even a day 3. He's a little bit undersized, but he's quick. So keep an eye out for him. He'll be a nickel corner, kind of like a Jordan Lewis type, who hasn't had a ton of success in Dallas, but he's hung on long enough. So those are just a few of the names that kind of come to mind.
Exactly, because everyone realizes like, oh, hey, like, we want this player. The one thing I do want to say about people who are going for the NFL this year who opted out, obviously because of COVID, I wouldn't be shocked. Like, if you see, I'm sorry, just give me a sec, but you obviously have the rare cases where guys like opted out. So there's a lot of like, you haven't played in a while, so we want to see how they do, because like I gotta wonder if that's going to affect guys like Jamar Chase or Micah Parsons, where they didn't get a 2020, so they kind of go on that Jake Fromm, like how Jake Fromm had a great 2017, but then 2018 and 19 he was quiet. That's why he ended up going, I think, in the 5th round or something like that. So it's just something to watch out for. Like, I'm sure they're going to be fine in the league. It's just that's something I think to keep in the back of scouts' heads as they head into draft season.
Yeah, I think, all the mocks that I've looked at, Jamar Chase has been top 5, if not for sure top 10. I think people recognize that the talent for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, but like you mentioned, there was a ton of guys who sat out, and a lot of them got to still participate in the Senior Bowl. A lot of them, are participating in their school's pro day. So, and if they fall, it's just one of those things where NFL just seems to be so much about the right situation versus the talent. I mean, at the end of the day, I do think, talent shines through, but a lot of guys, then, confidence becomes an issue, right? Like if you're not starting, if you're just not clicking in a system where people thought you would, and then, you start to, kind of get down on yourself. You see that a lot. And then, that's why some of these guys that get out of their rookie deal, they go somewhere else, they succeed. It's just, NFL is so much about matchups and about fit.
So what you're saying is Mitch Trubisky is going to go to another team and just light it up and become the MVP for 2021.
No, but maybe Carson Wentz.
Yeah, obviously we joke about Mitch Trubisky.
That's a better chance anyways.
Yeah. Okay, I want to say something about Mitch Trubisky quickly. I love everyone who goes, oh, you could have had Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, 4 years ago, I don't think anybody really knew, except for a select few, of what Mahomes was what he was capable of. Obviously, passing on Deshaun Watson looks silly, but I just want to add that in for everyone like that's saying like, oh, why didn't you draft Mahomes? It's like, I don't think 4 years ago everyone was going like, oh, Mahomes is going to be this. It's not like when Connor McDavid was coming out of the OHL, going into the NHL, where everyone knew this guy's going to be a solidified superstar, has potential to be one of the best of all time, even though right now he's stuck in that Mike Trout purgatory, which, going on a hockey note, what I mean by that is great player, but he's on a shitty team. Meanwhile, with Mahomes, I feel like in 2017 when he was drafted, you didn't exactly think, hey, this guy's going to win a Super Bowl in his second year starting. He's going to be the MVP in his first year starting, and he's going to go to 2 Super Bowls in his first 3 years, where guess what? His only 2 losses were to Tom Brady. So that's just something to watch out for. I'm not saying Mahomes is bad. I'm just saying, for anyone saying like, oh, why didn't the Bears take him? Or why didn't the Browns take him? Why they take Myles Garrett? But that's just something I wanted to point out quickly. That's just my little Mahomes thing for the day.
Yeah, definitely. And with regards to Mahomes, I recall him definitely being like an intriguing prospect, but kind of the same reasons that we talked about with Mac Jones earlier, coming from that
Yeah.
Texas Tech air raid offense, that guys who were just looking at stats, um, you know, the stats were always padded, and I'm drawing a blank on who came before him. Was it like Graham Harrell and guys like that that just had
Yeah.
like insane numbers, and obviously it doesn't always translate, but that's, I mean, you got to watch the tape at the end of the day.
Exactly, because look at a lot of those Big 12 schools. Like the Big 12 does not know how to play defense. Obviously, Oklahoma's defense is getting better, but that's just something to watch out for too. With like when it comes to quarterbacks in the Big 12, like obviously too, I've been skeptical of Mac Jones just because of the whole Alabama trends. Like if you look at it too, Mac wasn't even supposed to be their guy. He was the bridge quarterback because they got Bryce Young coming in this year, who's supposed to be a stud. So we'll see what happens. Yep. But that's the one thing with Alabama too. That's just like, hey, these guys just won a national championship on your roster. Guess what? Apparently one of the best college recruiting classes of all time is coming in for 2021, which is just insane to me.
Yeah, they just, no pun intended, but they just keep it rolling down there.
Exactly. Just roll, tide, roll all day long. But before we go, I think what I was going to say, Joe, is we're just over the hour mark now. Is there anything else you want to touch upon or talk about?
No, I think we've plowed the ground pretty thoroughly tonight, and always great to be on, and I enjoy doing this and can't wait to be back.
Love to hear it. Well, anyway, guys, this is episode 65 in the books. I got some stuff planned. Joe's going to be back on, obviously, before the draft. When pro days are going on, free agency, all that stuff, we'll get him back in here. But anyway, guys, like I said, thanks for stopping by if you stopped by. But also, thanks for listening to episode 65 of YWC Football Talk. I will be back next week, probably Monday or Tuesday, with a brand new episode. So stay tuned for that, guys. And enjoy the rest of your day, guys. And we'll see what happens with this offseason. It's going to be a crazy carousel.